FPI recently launched a program called The Psychology of Financial Planning. Now, this program was designed to equip and enable financial planning professionals. And we thought to introduce this to you today as well, and to also ask Lelane Bezuidenhout, the CEO of the Financial Planning Institute, to come and share with us why they've decided to include this as a module and a course for financial planning professionals. We know that the Certified Financial Planner Board of Standards in the US has also included behavioral finance concepts in their examinations, and the Corporate Finance Institute also offers behavioral finance as a syllabus. Now, for those of you who are new to the Amity brand, welcome to you as well today. Amity has been introducing goals-based financial planning concepts for financial planners, and we thought that this would then be ideal if we can incorporate the behavioral finance aspects that the FPI is talking about with what the goals-based concepts that Amity talks about. So in studio today, we would like to welcome Lelane Bezuidenhout. Now, I met Lelane once or twice backstage on other digital platforms, but never in person, and it's really lovely to have you here with us today. Welcome, Lelane.
Thank you so much, Tanya. It's wonderful to be here. I've been familiar with Amity since the days of Anton Swanepoel, so it's wonderful to have a look at your studio. Well done. And what you've managed to get right with the studio. And thank you for having the Financial Planning Institute of Southern Africa here this morning.
Great. Thank you so much, Lelane. And yes, let's maybe start off. Tell us perhaps why the FPI decided to now launch this course of the Psychology of Financial Planning.
Sure, I'm going to take you back a few years. You know, when COVID happened, we've seen with our clients how the behavior changed. If you look at the various biases that came in, that emotional biases, you know, during COVID, we all know what happened in the markets. A lot of the consumers made a lot of irrational decisions. So at that point in time, I just want to quickly maybe mention, so we have the CFP board in the United States. So the CFP board is the owner of the Certified Financial Planner designation or mark within the United States. Then the Financial Planning Institute is an affiliate of the Financial Planning Standards Board. So this morning you'll see that I'm wearing the FPSB CFP mark, and on this side the FPI CFP mark. So I feel a little bit like a head girl, but I live my brand and I talk my brand. So
brilliant.
If we then look at the CFP board, they have launched this, and at that point in time they've worked very close with Dr. Charles Chaffin. So we'll talk a little bit about Charles and Bradley a little bit later. So the CFP board, who's then also an affiliate, ran with that program, but Bradley then later and Charles then ran with their own program, and they started their own thing in the Psychology of Financial Planning. And you'll see that you can actually do their course online at the Psychology of Financial Planning, and you earn actually a badge. So let's then fast forward. Why is FPI doing this? So during 2021, the Financial Planning Standards Board ran what they call a JASS. Now, that's not music. Well, it's music to my ears, but the JASS stands for Job Analysis Survey. So any profession from time to time runs a job analysis survey to see what it is that a certified financial planner is actually doing on a daily basis. Because if we don't know what the job analysis is all about, we don't know if the curriculum that we offer is actually relevant to what you are doing. So the job analysis was ran, and 16 of the Financial Planning Standards Board's affiliates globally participated in that job analysis survey in 2021. So globally, the job analysis survey then indicated that more and more financial planners are getting involved in the psychology of financial planning. So let's quickly look. Is there a difference between behavioral finance and the psychology in financial planning? Yes, there is ever so slightly a difference. It's two concepts that actually works together. So if we look at behavioral finance, that works at understanding the emotional biases and heuristics, which is the rule of thumb that the consumer believes in, and why they sometimes have these emotional reactions to what's happening on the markets. Whereas the psychology of financial planning works on understanding your financial behavior, what it is that you do. So in other words, if you go a little bit on a retail shopping expedition because you may be having a bad day, you grab your husband's credit card and you said, I'll be back in 5 hours. Why do you do that? You know, it's all got to do with your behavior. And how do we then help the consumer to understand something about the psychology of financial planning? and also to work in financial education with your consumer so that they can make better informed decisions. So why did FPI then decided to launch this course, Psychology in Financial Planning? So when we completed the job analysis survey on the global level, so FPI is one of the top 7 affiliates for the Financial Planning Standards Board, and we then unpacked the job analysis survey, and we realized via the Standards Committee at the FPSB that globally the curriculum had to change and had to be updated. So we'll talk a little bit about the 6 steps of financial planning a little bit later, but let's have a look at how did the curriculum components change. So if you look at the Financial Planning Standards Board's curriculum that was launched globally on the 3rd of April, and please read through the curriculum, you'll find a lot of interesting things in that curriculum. So it was launched on the 3rd of April, and it's now knowing, doing, and being. The being obviously focusing more on the human side. But the knowing part, the curriculum changed. And there's a whole component that was added in, which is the behavioral finance, but also the psychology of financial planning. So that was only launched this year. FPI believes in partnerships. So what we did is Dr. Charles reached out to me via LinkedIn, and he said to me, how can we work together with the certified financial planners in South Africa? And I said to him, well, Charles, as you know, the curriculum was launched on the Financial Planning Standards Board site, and FPI still needs to develop material, but you've done it already. So if you look at economics, we spoke about a little bit later, I hate being a lagging indicator, I want to be a leading indicator. So what I then said to Charles is, let's see how we can make it work in South Africa. So the program that is actually running is not the Financial Planning Institute's program, it is Dr. Charles and Dr. Bradley's program. So they've agreed to come and run the program on FPI's platform. The IP obviously remains that of Dr. Charles and Dr. Bradley. It's fantastic to work with those 2 individuals, and I feel really privileged to work with Charles. He's such a down-to-earth person, but he believes in what he actually speaks about. So that is how it came about, where FPI is now working with Dr. Charles to actually host the program on our platform for a few months, where our planners, and it's not just the FPI members, it's non-members as well.
I suppose then, given your link to a more global setup like you've mentioned as well, do you guys see trends in the world? I mean, looking for instance at the Financial Planning Association, maybe in Australia or whatever the UK is doing, do you also see the trends shifting now towards financial planners in other or across the world, across the globe, actually incorporating the psychology aspect?
Absolutely. You know, we tend to think that we're different, but we're not. You know, as I work close with my counterpart in Australia, Sarah Boot, she's the new CEO of the Australian Association linked to the Financial Planning Standards Board. In my conversations with Sarah, we go through the exact same. You know, the consumer's behavior, even all the way to the UK, to Canada, where I work with Tasha Badstone, Canada, the US, the APAC region, which is more towards the East, Australia, all across the world, we're sitting with the same issues if we look at consumer behavior. And I need to touch a little bit on the importance of financial planning technology and how that is helping us so that we can have more time to actually sit with our client and have a conversation like you and I are having now. You know, let's call it in the old days. The old days is before COVID. 2018 is the old days, where you would sit with your client with a pack of papers and you would so focus on sign there, sign there, sign there. You know, now technology comes in and it really helps you to take care of all those mundane tasks, if I may call it that. And you can literally sit with your client now, and the more you understand about your client, and it's like that all the way from Australia to the UK to South Africa, where you sit and you understand what is your client's values, what do they believe in, how do they react to certain situations, but also what is their relationship with money. And the moment that you have those conversations with not just the husband, but maybe the wife in the room as well, is understand what is their collective view on money. And it does end up in the end of the day that you feel like a bit of a mentor. You are a mentor. Yes. And I think the sooner we realize that you are your client's mentor when it comes to money, the better. But you're also their coach. So you need to have those human skills to know how to work with people. And I think one of the strongest skills that we all can work on, even me, You know, when I'm always in a hurry, I always say to my children, mama sal later luister, wag, you know, and it's your listening skills. When you work with your client, you need to be present, you need to be relevant, and you need to participate. So think of the 3 P's. You need to participate in the conversation with your client. Your client can very quickly pick up if you're not listening. You know what, put the phone aside for that moment. You're in a bubble, you and the client. Yes. And you critically, we need to understand what critical listening skills is also. Yeah. So to circle back to your question, it's not that different across the globe. We tend to think it's different. We are dealing with different issues though. If we look at the economy, in South Africa currently load shedding is creating a lot of angst for the consumer out there. It's creating, you know, we've got a little bit of a different environment. But with that, I want to say we are one of the most resilient nations that I know, because we know how to keep the lights burning without the electricity provider.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it has created so many opportunities for other young people, solar and inverters and all those. I mean, we can have a complete conversation just on the resilience of the South Africans.
South Africans are very resilient, and we've got absolutely excellent sense of humor.
Yes. So, if we then bring it maybe back to the South African market, do you see younger advisors entering the industry now, perhaps considering moving into this goals-based or values-based, or even a term that we see quite often used, lifestyle financial planners? Because I do think that they are the advice or the segment of the market that might prescribe a bit more to these type of, you know, the softer and fluffier things, would be your lifestyle financial planners. I mean, it's not to say that a traditional financial planner that has, you know, a certain way of doing things for the last 30 years can't incorporate behavioral concepts in his business. But do you see the younger advisors tend more towards this type of financial planning philosophy?
Sure, I'm going to turn that question a little bit on its head, if you don't mind. I find that the older financial planner and financial advisor is actually more equipped to incorporate the mentor and coaching, because it comes with skills, it comes with years of experience of working with people. So you will find that the older financial advisor, and let's understand what is old.
Yes, and not offend anyone here.
No. So I'm gonna just dive into the different age groups maybe. Yes. So if we look at a typical financial advisor and financial planner that's maybe 45 years and older, a lot of the times there is apprehension coming from them because yes, there's new curriculum components, but the moment that, and I want to actually ask those advisors, go and have a look at the curriculum, and you're going to look at it and go like, but I've been doing this. You know, they don't have to wait for something to be codified, to be written down, to all of a sudden start doing it. With the experience that they have and working with people, they actually have it in them already. There's nothing wrong with doing a short skills course for any financial advisor and any financial plan and understanding human behavior. We can always do better in understanding human behavior. Now let's look at the younger generation that comes in, and they go by the names of millennials, as we know, or Generation Z, the Zoomers coming in. We need to appreciate the times that they grew up in. They grew up in with sending a mom a WhatsApp to say, hey mom, is the food ready? When's dinner ready? You know, instead of where you would stand up and go to mom and say, hi mom, can I help with dinner tonight? You know, they would send WhatsApps. They would be in chat rooms with their friends who lives maybe two houses down the street. So we need to understand the dynamics of the younger generation coming in, and that they actually need more help, in my view, to understand how to work with people in person. And not just in electronic places. So from a younger generation point of view, they have it in them to work, you know, with consumers from the psychological and behavioral finance point of view, but they do tend to rather want to deal with their consumers via electronic mediums. So that leaves us with understanding, how does a younger financial planner work with an older client, and an older financial planner working with a younger client. And I do believe that it's not always an older person who can just mentor. You can have a younger financial planner that comes in and who actually mentors an older financial planner how to use technology, for instance, how to work with your clients. So I think if we look, and I don't want to stereotype people into different little boxes, but I just think we need to appreciate the different times in which we actually grew up. And everybody, whether you're young or whether you're old, can do with additional training and how to work with people. So to circle back to your question, young people, do they embrace it? Yes, they absolutely do. But I do believe that our older people, older financial planners can come in and help with mentoring still. So there's a lot of mentoring still needed.
And then that's one part of maybe the demographics is the older and younger, but let's maybe take it to a multicultural type of question.
Yes.
And how do you then see the trends evolve across the financial planning industry? You know, multicultural financial advisors, other demographics, other racial groups coming in, becoming financial advisors. Is this behavioral financial planning elements something that can be adopted across cultures, across groups? I mean, I think the answer would probably be yes, because you've already referred to the UK, Australia, everyone having the same conversations. But South Africa is slightly different. We have a slightly different makeup of our cultures in South Africa, different language groups. How do you have the FPI seen different changes happening across that, maybe transformational changes, etc.?
If we look at transformation itself within the financial services industry, so let's start with the industry in South Africa. Transformation is still a bit slow, and I think that's why the Commissioner of the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, which is just across the road from you, recently published their transformation strategy that they have for the industry at large. Where they work with a transformation council, etc. But let's hone in on the financial planning profession specifically. Now, within South Africa, we have, give or take, about 5,300 professional members, and that includes the certified financial planner, including the financial services advisor and the registered financial practitioner. So we actually have 3 professional designations in South Africa. In fact, I actually looked at the stats last night as I prepare for some reporting for the upcoming FPI board meeting next week and our annual general meeting with our members. You can see that there has been ever so slight growth in our advice designations if we look at the definition of black as defined in the BBBE legislation that we have. So it's quite heartwarming to see that there is a growth from a more diverse point of view in our advice designations. We can, though, do a lot more with certified financial planner. We still have, with the CFP mark in South Africa, it's still predominantly male and white. But it's also what concerns me, Tanya, is it's a bit of an aging population that we are working with as well. And it's not just in South Africa where the certified financial planner population is aging, it's across the globe. So globally, there's more we must do to attract younger people to become certified financial planners. So I think it's no surprise to see that one of the focus areas that we have globally is to see how do we attract but also retain the younger certified financial planners. And then globally, we have seen that if you look at the attrition rate, which is the retention rate of certified financial planners globally, we have seen that those certified financial planners who maybe do not renew their membership, 30% of those individuals is actually certified financial planners younger than 40. So we need to understand, why is that? But to again come back to South Africa, let's focus on females. So if we look at that, we've got 32% of our professional members that is currently certified financial planners. So can we do more to create awareness? We can. And that is why FPI is quite involved. We actually have an MOU in place with Women in Finance. We had quite a brilliant session last week as well, Women in Finance, that focuses on creating and fostering that awareness around careers that's not just a financial planner, but in the whole finance sector, but also the Lean-In Circle under the leadership of Amanda John, for instance. So it's very important for FPI to work with Women in Finance and Lean-In Circle. So can we do more? We can always do more to create awareness, especially around young people. And maybe just one quick thing about that as well FPI launched the Young Financial Planner organization about 2 years ago, where we pull in your professional members younger than 45 years. They made a concession to keep me on. I'm definitely not falling in that age category anymore, but I'm ever so thrilled to still be part of YFPO and see what's happening in that community.
And I think I'm going to maybe now call him by the name, but Francois did as well from Propulsion, yes, where we've met before. And yes, they also do quite a bit for the young upcoming advisors. And I think that's brilliant. It ties in with what we've just discussed now about yes, the mentoring as well. So, but maybe let's go then back to the course, talk maybe about the 6-step financial planning, yes, because it's one of the modules on there is talking about the 6-step financial planning. And I mean, I think all financial advisors, especially the older ones, even perhaps those who still wrote the FPI, I think it was before it became
FPI and ILPA.
Yes, and so we all know that. But will behavioral elements or behavioral finance or psychological elements or whatever you'd like to term it, would that be an additional step, or do you see it as each step in practice should incorporate a bit of behavioral aspects?
I would say the latter, definitely incorporate. So if we look again at the international curriculum that was launched in April, you will see that we've actually done that. And the beauty of that curriculum, this is all 27 affiliates globally who's taken part in actually updating the curriculum. So the view that you see within the curriculum that I'm actually holding in my hand today, you will see that across the globe, everybody provided input into this. And the FPSB had quite a daunting task to make sure that this curriculum that they've launched is actually applicable to every single certified financial planner out there. So if I may, I just want to quickly touch on one of the two things that was actually worked into the curriculum. So if you look at the curriculum, we've added under the knowledge domain, which is the knowing domain, there's actually an 8th component that was added. So if we look at some of the knowledge topics that was added, the first one is behavioral finance and the psychology of financial planning. And if we then look at the subtopics, it is the introduction to behavioral finance. We have found previous years or prior years, I mean, if we go back to ILPA, which is the Institute for Life and Pension Advisors, back in 1981, that is when FPI actually was born, but we were called ILPA. And then at about 2001, we became the Financial Planning Institute of Southern Africa. But if we look at the curriculums back then, and even when I did my postgraduate diploma many, many years ago, you know, behavioral finance wasn't really in the curriculum. But if you look at the curriculum today, and especially if you look at the postgraduate diploma in investment planning, it is behavioral finance on steroids. So all of that is actually worked into the curriculum. But if you then look at traditional versus behavioral finance, biases and heuristics, it covers that. But then also talks about your traditional, which is your rational approach. Yes. And, you know, so if you look at the traditional approach to financial planning, it's always been the rational one. You know, and not where you start focusing on, okay, what is the emotional side, maybe of financial planning. We have an introduction to the psychology of financial planning. Then we've also worked in client and financial planner attitudes, values, and biases. It's a very important point that, so we always try to understand the client biases, but you need to understand your own biases, and you need to manage your own biases and your own beliefs as the financial planner working with your client, but then also client cognitive abilities and client financial literacy. And that circles back to the point that I made a little bit earlier on, that as a financial advisor and financial planner, you actually are your client's mentor and your client's coach when it comes to financial education. And the more you educate your client on financial matters, the more financial literate your client will actually be. Then it looks at client preferences and classification of client types. It then focuses on client beliefs and their influences on financial decision making, which is your biases coming in. Which is, I had to smile when I saw the overconfidence bias. We see a lot of that. But then also behavioral approaches for financial planners. So I think this is quite important that you understand what is the behavioral approaches for financial planners itself. And then crisis events with severe financial consequences for your client. How do you handle that? So I had to touch on the curriculum components before we actually move into the practice standards. So what is the practice standards? You've just referenced to it as the 6 steps of financial planning. Did that change? Do we all of a sudden have 20 steps now or 30 steps? No, it's still the 6 steps of financial planning. And then let's then also touch on lifestyle financial planning. So if we look at that, the 6 steps of financial planning actually covers all of that, and it's always covered it. When you look at the first step, which is establish the relationship with your client, that is where you are going to critically listen to your client to understand what is your relationship with money, what is your values, what scares you when it comes to money. And because you know that in the time that you started gathering the information as well, so you look at the qualitative and quantitative information that you collect from your client. That has always been the case, but there is indeed a bigger focus now on the psychology of financial planning, but also understand what is your client's biases. What is the rule of thumb? You call that heuristics. What is the, do they believe if you put your money under the mattress, it's going to grow? And how do you change that mindset for your client? And that's again where your role as a mentor and a financial coach becomes critically important for your client. So that's when you gather the information. And when you then analyze the information, especially around risk profiling, for instance, you then already understand, because you've gathered that information from your client, what's the biases, what is their beliefs, what is their relationship with money. You then already have a great understanding of what your client's risk profile actually is already because of the information that you gathered. And I think one of the things that really gets to me sometimes is that tick box approach when it comes to risk profiling. It's not supposed to be a tick box approach. If you really sit down with your client and you hone in and you understand who they are, that's part of your information that you gather. Then the plan that you develop in the end of the day takes into consideration what people do call, lifestyle financial planning. It takes into consideration which stage of your life are you actually in, because you need to understand that. Are you in the accumulation phase? Are you in the phase where you maybe are reaching, raising a young family? Are you preparing for early retirement? Where are you in your life? And you need to understand that each life stage comes with different fears. So the psychology of financial planning, we can actually break it into the psychology of financial management. Do you understand your own household ratios? What does your liquidity ratio look like? Do you spend more than what you earn? Consumers need to understand that. The psychology of retirement planning, there's so many consumers out there that are so scared to retire because they understand that I did not save enough. And that's again where your role as mentor and coach is of critical importance for your client, because they are scared. Let's talk about estate planning and maybe the diverse cultures in South Africa. So last year we had a magnificent speaker at the FPI conference, Samke, and she dived into why certain cultures don't do estate planning. And if we look at the various cultures, in certain cultures it's absolute taboo to talk about death. Yeah, so they don't have a valid will in place because it's taboo to talk about death, because then you upset.
You almost call it onto you.
But
right?
that's exactly that.
Yes.
So as a financial planner, you need to understand those dynamics, and you need to unpack that with your client and explain to them what is the importance of having a valid will in place and what the consequences is of dying intestate in South African context. So those are the type of conversations you need to have with your client. Then you implement the plan, and you need to understand, when you implement the plan, what is that service level agreement between you and your client? Who implements what, and who's responsible for implementing the plan? But then the last step is then your review or monitoring. And we should never underestimate the importance of that annual review, and actually want to move away from annual review, because it doesn't have to be just an annual review. Whenever there's a change in your client's lifestyle, whenever there's a change in anything in your client's life, you have to actually do a review to say, let's look, because financial planning is helping your client with their personal strategy. It's all about strategy, and it's all about problem solving. So how do you, when you sit with your client, is to say, you know what, I can see that something changed in your lifestyle. You maybe received, in this economy, you were blessed to still receive a salary increase. Whatever the case may be, what is the impact on your lifestyle? How does that impact on your strategy? Are we going to put a little bit more towards investing because you don't need to spend more? You don't need that new car. but you need to save more towards retirement. And those are the type of things that when you sit with your clients, so the 6 steps of financial planning is very relevant to this very day. And behavioral finance and the psychology of financial planning has always been part and parcel of it. It's just where you're focused now, because you've got financial planning technology that's helping you with gathering the information. Your client can go, and gone are the days, where you need a data capturing clock, because the client goes in and all you say is, here's the link, please go and capture your information. And you then sort all the poppy issues out as well, because the client then opts in and they then opt to give you all the information voluntarily, and you have all the information. So instead of capturing those information with your client, how you married, not happily, is it in terms of in community of property or anti-nuptial contract, all of that information you have already. So when you sit with your client, I already know that you are maybe in community of property, you have so many children, I know all the information. So I can spend more time to actually understand the behavioral finance aspects from you coming through, but also sit with you to understand what behavior via my mentoring and coaching skills can I help change, so that you as the consumer can change your behavior to save more, to plan better, and have the right type of risk cover in place. We saw with COVID, a lot of people did not understand having life cover in place, for instance. So the role of the financial planner advisor is critical. Always still operate within the 6 steps of financial planning. It's a very solid framework to this very day, whether you call it lifestyle financial planning or whether you call it financial planning. In my view, it's pretty much, a lot of overlapping areas. It's pretty much the same.
And also, you've touched on the review meetings, and I don't know how familiar you are with Mitch Anthony in the US as well, and he does a lot on goals-based, and he mentions that you almost have to do a preview meeting for your clients. And I actually thought how interesting it is because we just react. We're not proactive, and we just react on whatever the client. So it is so important then to just sit with your client, discuss that, and then tie it in with life events, like you mentioned. And again, I think that's also very nice. We know of an advisor who also he moved away from goals-based and more into events type. Because if you think about that as well, a lot of clients, if you tell them there's a goal to save for, already they think they don't have enough money, I don't have goals, whatever. But when you talk about events, we all have those events. You will most probably die. You will most probably get married or be in a partnership with someone. So there are certain events in our lives that we need to plan for. So I think that becomes quite crucial then if we start to incorporate that.
I absolutely love what you're saying about the event. So I'm going to take another example to again say to the advisor and planner out there, it's all in the way that you communicate with your client. So if you say to your client today, so your goal is obviously not to die. That's not a goal, that's an event. But if we look at that and we say, and I say, sit with you today and I say, you know what, your money needs to last until you die. How are you going to feel? You're going to feel like, oh my goodness, I'm going to die. And your brain, the poor consumer sits there and all they do is they think about death. What's my gravestone going to look like? Oh my goodness, who's going to be at my funeral? Are they going to cry? So they all they do is they think about death. But if I sit with you and I say to you, you know what, this money needs to last for as long as you live. Complete different story. Because immediately I don't think about death. I think about, you know what, I actually want to go and do bungee jumping before I'm 70 years old. You start thinking about the things you want to do for as long as you live. So I think we need to not underestimate the power of our words.
Framing. So
the correct with your client. And one should never, ever, ever, and I know a few decades ago, people maybe used fear to drive sales. We should never, ever use fear to drive whatever outcome you maybe want as the advisor. Just the framing is 100% important.
And I'd like to maybe move on to the 4 hats that, well, we've referred to it in some of our previous webinars, the 4 roles or the 4 hats that advisors would typically wear. And you have alluded a bit to the coach in us that we need to bring out when we meet with our clients. But we say there's a planner role, an administrator role, a coaching role, and then a consultant role.
Yeah.
And considering then the behavioral aspects, it seems it fits in with that coach.
Yeah.
Do you perhaps agree with, firstly, with the 4 roles? Do you think that a typical advisor out there should wear all 4 hats? Or how do you see it? I mean, you work with a lot of advisors, advisor groups out there. Do you see good financial planners wear all 4 hats, or maybe outsource sometimes one of those hats to another party or another person in the office?
Most of the times, a lot of those roles are actually outsourced, especially if you look more on the admin side. You'll find that it is outsourced. But at the onset, I still want to say that, as the advisor and the planner, you're still responsible for those hats. So you can outsource it, but you're still responsible to make sure that whatever needs to happen. So definitely outsourcing. I see a lot of financial advisors outsourcing it. I see a lot of the financial advisors that is working hand in hand with what we call a paraplanner. And that is a very, very important role. And the paraplanner, you may have 2 certified financial planners, for instance, that works together on a client's file, where the one is a paraplanner and one is the client-facing certified financial planner that actually sits with the client. And we should never, like I said, underestimate the role of that paraplanner, because that is literally the person that goes in and works out the financial plan for you and work hand in hand with the client-facing certified financial planner. So there is definitely, advantages for a planner to work with a paraplanner, but also somebody who can outsource the administration.
If we consider then behavioral elements or the psychological discussions, it often means that you have a meeting or a conversation with your client that looks very different.
Yeah.
I think that's what scares some traditional financial advisors.
Yeah.
Now you've had a client for 30 years.
Yeah.
You've never spoken to them about personal things. And suddenly you tell them, I'm going to ask you about your life and your ideas.
That's
and your.
it.
How do you make those transitions as a traditional financial planner?
I have to smile because, if I think of my own certified financial planner, if he asks me out of the blue, and I've worked with him for many years, even when I was at the FPI Ombudsman's office, and if he had to ask me those questions today, I'll ask him, Ashley, are you okay? You've known me for years. Why are you asking all these questions all of a sudden? And it's the way you alluded to it earlier, again, framing. So I'm going to keep on latching onto that word. Is you can say to your client, what, if we look at how the world has changed, we saw 2019, everything was okay. 2020, a global pandemic hit us. So you can always leverage on that and say, I just want to see, are you okay? We came through this past 3 years. You sort of just interview your client and say, I'm asking you all these questions because I want to understand how that this world events actually change you. Do you feel that you are a different person? You may have a client where there was actually a death in the family due to COVID, and that's where you say to your client, help me understand how I can be of better service to you. How do I help you? Because we should never try and be specialists that we are not. In other words, but you can ask the person to say, from a mentoring and coaching point of view, how are you? And you can ask your client, how did the global events change your relationship maybe with money? Do you understand the need for estate planning maybe a bit better now? Do you understand, in global events like this, that we need to make sure that you've got enough savings in case something goes wrong, that emergency savings. So I think it's a brilliant opportunity when you do especially at reviews with your clients, just to start building in those conversations. And don't make it awkward. I think that's the most important. Don't say to your client, my financial institution now wants me to start being your coach. That just makes it completely awkward. Just gradually start building and to say, how do you feel about the interest rates that went up again? And you, instead of saying, you start working in those feeling questions. How do you feel about interest rates? Where do you see yourself with all of this that's happened maybe in the next 5 years? So the review is a brilliant opportunity to start asking the feeling questions. How do you feel? and just don't make it awkward. I think that's the most important.
Yes. Maybe we can chat then about Dr. Charles.
Yes.
He's, how do you pronounce his surname?
Chaffin, yeah.
He's one of the speakers that will now present this course with Dr. Bradley Klontz. And he also released various books. The one that he recently wrote was the book Numb. I think it's one of his more recent books. And he speaks about technology. And that will help us, technology could even potentially help us better, deeper those relationships with clients. So when advisors then want to implement, let's say, this type of psychological elements in their practice, do you think it will only be the softer elements, like the way we listen, the way we communicate? Or do you think it can also start with processes, implementing certain technological processes in the practice?
It is both. So if we reflect on Dr. Charles's book, I think he authored that book in about 2021-ish. And if you don't know where to find the book, it is on Amazon. It's a book that's not that long to listen to. If you're like me and you don't have time to physically hold a paper copy in your hand,
you can just do the audio
book.
It's
a brilliant book to listen to whilst you're stuck in South Africa, which is a reality here, whether you're in Cape Town or in Johannesburg. So you can implement that across the board from technology. And I think gone are the days where we think that technology does not have a critical impact on your business. I'm going to run you through a quick acronym that any financial planning practice should actually try and incorporate. So it's PPSTK. So I'm not referring to PPS, the financial institution. I'm talking about PPSTK. So what am I talking about? So if we look at his book Numb, he does dive into technology and how you can actually pull technology closer to incorporate that. So from the behavioral side all the way to the processes that you've said. So you need to understand, we actually had a brilliant discussion yesterday. We have a forum for our professional practices, and we actually unpacked this exact conversation. So you need to understand your processes within your own firm. Again, you can use technology there to integrate into your processes, which can be built on the 6 steps of financial planning: establish, gather, implement, monitor, analyze, and review. So you can build all of that on top of that, but you need to understand your processes to the T. For your various types of clients, you need to understand your value proposition for your different client segments that you maybe have. So you need to understand your own business inside out. Because if you don't understand that, technology is not going to help you. Because technology will always come in and lie on top on the business that you have already shaped. You need to have a strategy. You need to understand what is your vision, what is your mission. That's strategy 101. Even if you look at how the licensing requirements at the Conduct Authority had changed going forward, one of the requirements that you need to now give once you become a new financial institution is your strat plan. What is it that you're trying to achieve? So you have that strategic plan, your strategic objectives, then your processes. So what is the other acronyms? It is process, then people. Do you have the right people employed within your financial planning practice? If you are maybe, I can hear a lot of advisors saying, yeah, but I'm a one-man band show. You know, then it makes of critical importance, who do you then go? What do you outsource? So it's about the people, the processes, then the systems. What systems do you use? And those systems, is it compatible with your vision? Is it going to take you where you want to be? Does it work for your clients? Does it work for you? From a regulatory point of view, does it cover all your risks? We know we've got GDPR globally, and then we've got protection of personal information within South Africa. So whatever system that you use, and wherever it integrates into your CRMs, you need to make sure that it's compatible and that it works within the regulatory framework. But then the latest to it, it always used to be just PPS, but then TK came in as well. So that's technology. So how do we use technology? And I know a lot of people are saying AI, don't talk to me about AI. But AI is here to stay.
Absolutely.
It's not going to go away. Is it going to take over your role as an advisor? So you can have, hello, my name is Lelané, I'm going to advise you today. No, that's not going to happen. It's not going to take over your role. It's going to enhance the role that you have. But with especially open AI, there's always that little bit of risk management that you need to apply. AI is still learning. So you need to always make sure, do not rely 100% solely on AI, but you can work with that together alongside AI, but it will never ever replace you as a financial advisor. In fact, if you ask ChatGPT, what's the future of financial planning, it itself tells you that it will always be relevant. AI comes in and it works alongside you. But then the fifth element is one where we need critical focus across not just the financial planning industry, but I would say any and all industries. So we know that the global pandemic was an extreme catalyst. We actually spoke about that a little bit later. I mean, here's your studio. It was a catalyst for you to get in touch with more people, a catalyst to develop your financial planning practices. But if we look at technology, let's just talk about Microsoft and not all the other technologies that you have out there. Just look at how Microsoft had enhanced in the past 3 to 4 years, because the world went virtual and hybrid. Because the world is hybrid, let's face it. I mean, I could have met with you online today, but we are here in person. So from a hybrid point of view, the knowledge gap, that's what the K stands for. The knowledge gap is astronomical big. So you'll find that even the IT solution providers are at this point in time where they're constantly catching up with the changes in technology. So let's then talk about the advisors and the financial planner. And I don't like talking about CPD. I always refer to it as continuous professional development in its full name, because that's what it is. It's continuous professional development. Part of CPD is skills. You need to continuously upskill yourself in technology. You cannot send a fax to your client anymore. You cannot just rely on email anymore. You need to understand what are the ways to communicate with my client, but how do I then also understand how technology comes in, especially automation. And we find that the skills gap is sometimes very big, but you'll also find that advisory firms would maybe incorporate new technology into their firms, but then the change management is severely lacking. So change management from teaching your client, this is the new platform, this is how it's going to roll out, this is how I need to communicate with you going forward, but change management within the firm as well. And because people don't understand the technology, or they may be scared of it, they tend to not use the technology and still work on their old Excel spreadsheets. Where somebody deletes your formula. I hate when that happens. So it's PPSTK. So technology, you must incorporate it. And technology helps you with mapping out your processes, all the way to the type of individual you need to employ or maybe outsource to, understanding what systems you need to use, understanding technology, but most definitely the knowledge gap. And within that knowledge gap sits the coaching and the mentoring as well. So there's still a massive knowledge gap with understanding what is coaching, what is mentoring, how do I even do that? Inherently, because we are human beings, you actually know how to do that.
I believe that, yeah.
Inherently, you know how to do that. And I want to speak to the moms and the dads out there. You inherently know how to mentor your child. You inherently know how to coach your child. And if you're not strong on mentoring and coaching skills, a lot of the financial advisors and planners I know have done maybe your strength finder. I've done my strength finder. My top strengths is leadership, relator, coacher, and mentor. That's my top strengths. And if you then find somebody within your team who the coaching and the mentoring, it's maybe not their top skill. It's very difficult to force somebody into that role. That's when it maybe helps within your financial planning practice to have somebody that helps you with the coaching, that helps you with the mentoring. I've seen some of the practices where they actually have a whole segment that works just on mentoring and coaching. Not just mentoring the client, but also mentoring and coaching the financial planner, him or herself. Because if you are an empty vessel, how can you be of relevance to your client?
That's very true. And I think, and I must agree with you, I think we've seen this with one of our previous webinars where we also decided recently to add to our team an organizational psychologist.
Very important.
And I cannot tell you enough how excellent it is to work with someone that shows you. I mean, often you don't know your own flaws, firstly, and then you sometimes don't focus enough on your strengths, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
And it's one of the webinars that people can go and watch again if you'd like. And we've even drafted nice templates for the advisors that can actually go and use them.
Awesome. Well done.
On listening skills,
Yeah.
and also the conversations that you need to have. So, but I mean, you've touched on this now, and previously in our discussion now, is the listening skills that's so crucial.
Very crucial.
People do know when you are not listening to them.
Your body language gives you away.
Exactly. So it's small things like that. But maybe one other aspect, and I'm going to throw it into this mix or this conversation this morning: emotional intelligence.
Oh my goodness, you took the words out of my mouth.
So I mean, and I don't want to now again offend anyone and say it's a gender thing, but often women tend to show a bit more of the emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And it was so interesting when you referred to the dynamics of more or less female advisors in the industry. You would think that we would make ideal coaches.
Absolutely. Because it's inherently of who we are as mothers. But it's not a gender-based thing. So if I may quickly, and it's amazing how I just, we felt each other. I was going to touch on emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is worked into the curriculum as well. So if we look at emotional intelligence, I think the first thing that's very important that any advisor or any planner that's working with a client needs to be aware of is the first step in emotional intelligence is self-awareness. If you lack self-awareness, that's a big problem. So what is self-awareness? Short. Self-awareness is understanding what impact do I have on the people around me. So when I walk into the room, do people run away or do they come to me? So do I push people away or do I draw people closer? So first and foremost, understand self-awareness. What impact do I have on people around me? And then if you'll allow me, I'll quickly run through an example that I always use with people, because you have blue people, red people, green people, and yellow people. And with that, I'm referring to the various emotional intelligence that we get from people. So it's just really high level. So blue is somebody who's extremely analytical. That's somebody that would come and sit with you with all the information. I would think that a paraplanner is somebody who's very strong on analytical skills. Then you have the red person. Blue and red makes purple. But a blue person could frustrate a red person tremendously. So who's a red person? A red person is somebody who says, give me the facts, summarized, spare me the nonsense, That's somebody, if you walk in there with a file with analytics from here to the end of the world, the red person is going to say to you, just give me the 5 highlights. That's it. And that person doesn't mean to discount all the work that you've done. It's just their personality. Then the green person is somebody who always wants to help you. Can I make you coffee? Can I carry your bag for you? Can I help you? Can I help you? Can you help you? Eventually they're like, go away, I don't need your help. That's a person who just wants to always help you. And they do it to the extent where they actually, they do harm to themselves, because they never get to a point where they look after themselves, because they're always busy helping somebody else, always busy with that. And then the yellow person, that person is just always happy. That person comes in, la 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 la, they come in, they're the yellow sunflower. They come in, they brighten up the day. You would never know whether that person is going through a financial crisis or how that person is really doing, because that person is always smiling. You would never know what that person is going through. So now if we look, for instance, at conflict resolution. So now you're working with your client and there's maybe a conflict situation and you need to resolve that with your client. Whether it's conflicting between you and the client, or conflicting financial objectives, whatever the case may be, is you can run through those quadrants. So let's start with red. Red is I'm going to use a silly example of, you've got parking bays. Let's use the parking example, parking bay. So red is, I come to you and I say to you, hi, morning, you're on my parking. That's the facts. I didn't analyze, nothing. You're on my parking. So immediately you know, oh, this conversation is about the parking. I did see Lelané's name, but I thought she's not here today, so I took the parking. Silly example. And I go like, hi, you're on my parking. And then blue, I analyze a little bit more. I say, that's my parking because I actually broke my leg and I cannot walk far. So I've analyzed a little bit. And then the green is, how can I help you find another parking that's maybe a bit closer And YOLO is, now that we've sorted this, let's go for a cup of coffee quickly. So you start with that, but you always start with stating the facts from an emotional intelligence point of view. And this is the same with your clients. You can state the facts with a smile. I'm not, "You're my parking." I'm like, "Hi, you're my parking." And you immediately get the feeling of, okay, she's not upset. And then I say, "I need that parking because my leg's broken. But how can I help you? Let's speak to somebody in facilities, find another parking for you that meets your needs. And then, are you available for a cup of coffee? How's your kids doing?"
Yes.
And that's it. No fight, no hard feelings, and you resolved the parking issue.
Yes.
So EQ is critically important.
Thank you. I think we gave something back to the advisors this morning, just to go back to small things. Like, because this is now not even just psychology or financial planning anymore and talking to clients, but even within your office. Yes, and being human and chatting to family or friends or anyone, actually, you can now incorporate just what you've spoken to. And that was actually a very valuable piece of information as well. Maybe then to end off our conversation this morning and bringing it back to, because at Amity we really believe in also changing the financial advice industry for the better, for clients, always considering the end client and the value you give to them. But one of the things we've seen was that what really lacks often at advice practices would be a value proposition. And I wasn't really thinking that it would be part of the questions this morning, but you did touch on it earlier, saying that it is part of now when you set up your business that you need to put a strategy there in place and show, what's your strategy and your beliefs. But if you really articulate a value proposition well, you can really incorporate so many of the aspects we've spoken of today.
Absolutely.
But what's your views, perhaps? Do you see practices implementing value propositions? Is it still maybe a foreign concept? The one we've spoken about on one of our webinars, we called it centralized investment proposition, which actually incorporates a value proposition, your due diligence documents, your financial planning philosophy, your investment plan, a management philosophy. But do you see advisors just doing business, not really sitting down and articulating that?
It does happen that they do not articulate that, and that's where we can help as the thought leadership, within the professional. FPI helps financial planning practices with understanding value propositions as well.
Lelané, thank you. Maybe you can give us your closing statement here on the psychology of financial planning. You've had the privilege of now meeting Dr. Charles. Bradley Klontz is going to be part of this session. You've met both of them. You've shared how great these speakers are. You've seen the course itself. Maybe a closing statement, maybe something that the financial advisors that's watching here today can take away why you really think it's so crucial to start incorporating the psychology of financial planning in their practices.
All right. So first and foremost, we need to have appreciation for what we chose to do in life and in which profession we are in. We are in the people's business. You're not working where your role is, I fix a machine. Where your role is maybe an engineer, you don't work with people. You are in the human people's business. You need to understand. So if I am working with a person and I'm fixing you and everything that's around you, around your finances, it is of critical importance that you understand something about the human being. It's not a machine where I can just take your ear off and plunk it here and hope the machine is still going to work. You need to understand something about the dynamics of a human being. And let's face it, we are emotional creatures. We are people that we're not a machine. We actually have emotions. We have thought processes. And we spoke a little bit earlier about Daniel Kahneman's book as well. We need to understand the slow thinking, the fast thinking, the consumers, the way that they think. But the psychology in financial planning and behavioral finance has always actually been there. I think it's just been giving names now. Yes. And if you go and look at the curriculum, again, somebody that's been in the industry for a very long time will say, oh, we used to do this 20 years ago, but we called it something else. Did the human behavior change over the past 2 decades? Absolutely yes. Why? Technology has had a very big impact on the way that people has changed behavior. And if you think of social media as well, A lot of the consumers out there would rather, and this is a problem, where I feel we need more regulation in the finfluencer space. So a lot of the people would go to TikTok, listen to a finfluencer, and base their decisions on that. And it is on a high level, on IOSCO's level, which is the international body that looks after securities and investments. A lot of the regulators sit on IOSCO, and they focus on finfluencers and the bad impact that they sometimes have. Can you be a good finfluencer? Can you incorporate that into your practice? Yes, you can, but make sure you've got a very specific social media strategy and what it is that you want to say. So technology is here to stay, but it will amplify your role as a financial planner, and psychology in financial planning and behavioral finance has always been there. And technology is here to help you to work more with your client and sit down and say, hi, how are you? And critically to listen to you, not say, I need to run, I've got my next meeting coming up. So it's here to stay, and my closing statement would be embrace it, and maybe do a short course on behavioral finance and an understanding the psychology in financial planning. And good news, I have to mention this, Dr. Charles will actually be at the Financial Planning Institute's professional convention in November, and not digitally Zoom him in, he's going to be in South Africa. So if you want to meet him and have a conversation with Dr. Charles, he will be in South Africa.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yes.
Lelané, really, we'd like to thank you for taking the time to come into the studio, to come and share the views of the FPI. You represent them. We spoke about exactly that this morning, that we are all representatives of the organizations we work for and what we stand for. And we believe that, or we see the value that the FPI also gives to the industry, that you do excellent work for the industry as well. So we would like to thank you for that and for sharing your insights, and I think thank you to the FPI for really bringing Dr. Charles to the South African advisors, and for him and Bradley Klontz, and to be able to give us access to such quality speakers and such a great course. So thank you for everyone who watched today's webinar, and for those who might watch this afterwards as well. Thank you for tuning in. It was such an honor to be in conversation with Lelane Bezuidenhout. We will again share the link that you can go and register for that course. And as she mentioned, in November, Dr. Charles will be in South Africa, so keep an eye out on the communication as well. And thank you once again for joining us. And please keep an eye out on the blog that will also follow this month's webinar, where we will cover some more of the topics on the psychology of financial planning. Thank you and have a great day.